Attention WFIA members, the virtual 2024 WFI convention will be this fall from September 13th through September 15th, 2024. Scheduled to appear are the world's strongest man, Ken Patera, the world's most dangerous announcer, Gary Michael Capetta, Bill Apter, and just recently signed the High Flyers, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne. And folks, there's more coming on board. So run, don't walk to your keyboard. Get on that computer. Check the WFIA.org website and our Facebook page to see when these guys are going to be scheduled and their prices. Folks, if you are not a WFIA member, you will be paying an additional fee. So go to the WFIA.org today and register, become a member, and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to another edition of Bumps and Thumps, the Talk of Wrestling. I'm Brian Ferguson. Folks, you have a special treat today. We are going to be talking with the son of the greatest wrestler on God's green earth, 8-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, and truly one of the greatest, toughest wrestlers in the sports history, wrestling. I want to bring in Justin Race, the son of the late, great Harley Race. Justin, thank you for coming on today, my friend.
Oh, absolutely, Brian. I love to do it. That's something I love to do is talk about all his accomplishments and what he's done for the sport and for a lot of people.
Yeah. A friend of mine, Chris DiCarlo, interviewed you a few weeks back on his show. Count Anywhere, Chris DiCarlo. He mentioned you. He said he interviewed you, and he said you would be willing to come on my show, and I really appreciate that. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I love getting on talking with people. It helps me give back to those that have given so much to me and my family and my father, of course.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that. You know, you're the son of this legend. And let's talk a little bit about you, like growing up. Okay, I've seen pictures of you on Facebook and stuff with other wrestlers' kids, Kurt Hennig. You know, when his dad, your dad, and his dad, Larry the Axe, teamed together in the mid '60s. And what was your childhood like growing up as a wrestler's son?
Well, it is very unique. I mean, there's no question about that. I was kind of looked at as, like here in Kansas City, there's 60 guys in the team. They each have two children. Then there's 120 kids that basically their father does the same thing. Wrestling is more like golf or swimming or something. There is no team. There is no, it was his fault. It was not my fault. This and that, going on. Wrestling is an individual sport. And so it's unique in the respect that since I don't brothers or sisters, I don't have anybody besides the old, Kurt Hennig, the guys that's sadly enough have passed away, but like Dwayne Johnson, and those are the kind of people I could talk to that I could relate to because they knew what was going on. It's not, it's very difficult to find someone to say, oh yeah, I remember doing something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask, you say Kansas City area you're from. He had a promotion up there. He partnered with some other people, Bob Geigel, I believe, and
Pat
a few
O'Connor.
others. Pat O'Connor, yeah. I was going to say Pat, but I wasn't 100%, so thank you. Hanging out with those guys. I mean, hanging out with all these legends. I mean, you grew up in a time where, NWA was the prominent promotion. It covered the entire United States and overseas, New Zealand, Australia,
all those flags that were on that belt.
Yeah, right. Canada, it's what was it like being around those legends? I'm sure you weren't intimidated because you had your dad, but I mean, what was your experiences like with those guys?
To be honestly truthful with you, it was kind of like having a bunch of uncles. I watched him wrestle, of course, and saw him wrestle many times. But I spent, especially when I was a little kid, and then when I got a little bit older, and kind of could appreciate the respect they gave to my dad. I hung out in the dressing room, and just as a little kid, I was bouncing around on Andre's knee and just goofing around being a kid in the locker room. And then as I grew up, I had, more serious conversations with them, and it was kind of like having a bunch of uncles.
Yeah, I could
It's,
imagine. But it was,
I
I would
don't know
admit,
any, it's hard for me to describe it compared to, because I don't know any different. I have no
right.
idea what it would be like to come home from school, whether you're in second grade or 10th grade or whatever, and dad's home for dinner, and the insurance salesman or something, and he's at home for dinner. I have no idea, no concept of that at all.
Yeah,
So to me, it's normal.
right.
That's how it was.
Was it challenging though? I mean, your mom and you,
Sure. It was.
I'm sure there were times where, you're in school or something, and I'm sure you had some kids harassing you because you were Harley's kid. I mean, or maybe I'm wrong. I
surprisingly
don't know.
surprisingly little of that happened, because I went to the same school district, and had, for the most part, except for some that left, some came in and whatever, the same group of friends for a long time.
Okay.
So, they grew up with him too.
Yeah.
I have pictures of him where he'd go down on our boat dock, and he'd grab a hold of two of the metal beams on the boat dock, and me and all of my friends would try to push him off of there and push him in the water, and we never could. And I'm talking like 8, 10, young little boys. So he was like a big jungle gym to them. and as you grow up, they don't. The thing that they had the most fun with, because they knew he was such a mild mannered, nice guy. I mean, he was the one that when I had the sleepover with a bunch of guys or whatever, he's the one that got up and made his chocolate chip pancakes in the morning.
Oh, that's awesome.
So the thing that my friends used to have fun with was, a new kid would move into the district or whatever, and they'd hear my dad, and, oh my god, that's his dad. And, yeah, that's his dad. And they become part of friends of my friends. Well, they bring them over to the house, and they're like, oh, we got to warn you now, Harley's at home, so be on your best behavior when you're there. I mean, this poor kid, whoever it was, would walk into the house. I thought he was going to pee his pants. My dad would give him that promo look, and then I'm just kidding with you, and he'd pat the kid on the head and says, how you doing? It's nice to meet you, Jeff or Steve or whatever. And
Yeah.
so they like to kind of play that joke on new friends.
Yeah. Wow. Hello, everyone. This is Brian Ferguson, the host of Bumps and Thumps, the talk of wrestling. I want to tell you about a new podcast out called Falls Count Anywhere. It is a classic pro wrestling podcast that brings you the legends of wrestling with true wrestling fans Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. They bring on guests that are legends in this business, as well as wrestlers of today, promoters, referees, you name it. They have them on there, folks. And I encourage you to listen to them. If you're on YouTube, watch them. They drop every Saturday. They have their podcast. They drop it in the afternoon. So look forward to that podcast coming out. Falls Count Anywhere podcast with Chris DiCarlo and Charlie Turner. Folks, you will not be disappointed. I guarantee it. And enjoy the podcast. That's funny. I mean, he was I've met him a few times, and this is what I wanted to discuss with you. I was at an event of his in Springfield, Missouri. It was I think it was 2012. And
Uh-huh.
I walked past, I saw him in his truck uh, right before the show started, probably about a half hour or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked over at my wife and I said, "That's Harley Race." And I had a action figure that I
Oh,
wanted
cool.
him to sign, and
That's great.
I said I'm going to have him sign it later. Well, he saw me, he waved me over to him, and I said, "Yes, sir." He goes, "What do you got there, kid?" And I said, well, I said it's an action figure, but I said, "You're out here. I don't want to bother you. I'll wait till we get inside and
Mhm.
ask you to do it. No, I'll do it now. Go ahead, thank you. He signed it. 8
Mhm.
times NWA World Champion Harley Race. I gave him the
Yeah,
marker, and he
yeah.
goes, "Here you go." And I said, "Thank you so much." He goes, "Thanks for coming out to the show, kid." I'm thinking, kid, I'm like 40 something years old. he's like, he's like, "Thanks for coming out, kid. Enjoy the show." And it was so great. I mean, I was on cloud nine, and
Yeah,
I was hooked on his shows then because that was the first one I went to when he had
so good one.
WLW in Springfield. Yeah, I was hooked, and I started going to him more,
Oh, okay,
and
I understand. Yeah,
it was
he was very fan friendly
mhm,
and very wrestler friendly. He got a great reputation in the business because of him not only taking beatings for good television or good matches, but
mhm,
also he was always as accessible as he could possibly be. There'd be times when, maybe I'm 11, 12, whatever years old, and we'd go out to dinner. Just mom, dad, and I talk about family things, and people are always walking up to the table and asking for autographs. And, understandably, my mom would say, "Can't they wait until we're finished eating or something?" And my dad looked at her and he said, "Yvonne, that person paid for this meal. That person sent you on vacation you just went on. That person
mhm,
bought you that nice, the nice outfit that you're wearing right now. If it wasn't for their butts in seats watching me,
yeah,
we'd live in a tent." And I took that farther as I grew on. I mean, he sat me down and told me when
yeah,
I was old enough to really understand what he meant. He said, "Justin, if someone recognizes you or me or what have you, give them their 5 minutes. To
yeah,
stop what you're doing unless you're bleeding to death or late from work or something. Uh, Stop. Let them ask their questions. Let them tell you about the time when they watched me with their father when they were 5 years old. Just let them have that nostalgic 5 minutes because
yeah,
it's 5 minutes that they will never forget."
yeah.
And I've tried to always adhere to that. People get me cornered and ask me questions still. If I don't have anything to do, I'll answer anything they want to know. But
Yeah.
there's there was like you said, there was some difficulty. It's very hard to have my dad wrestled 300 days of the year,
Yeah.
and the schedule for the NWA champion was just nearly unattainable. He wrestled.
Right.
Sorry to get off the topic a little bit, but
No,
he
please.
wrestled one time. He mentioned this, but I think this is two different occasions. The one I remember most, it was December 17th. He wrestled for 1 hour against Shonhai Bubba, Giant Bubba in Japan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in December 17th, also in Los Angeles, California, he wrestled for 1 hour because the international date line, so it's still the same day. And then on December 18th, he wrestled for an hour in San Juan, Puerto Rico. So it's basically 3 hour matches in 2 days.
Whoo!
Yeah.
You would
So,
unheard of now. You'd never.
no,
Nobody
these
could.
guys
Nobody
couldn't
could
take
do
that.
that.
And they did it for 30 some years too, not one or two.
Right.
But yeah, he did everything that he could. And, but of course, when I was young, the way to be with my dad was travel with him. So, I mean, I've been blessed to have been to many, many different countries
Yeah.
before I was 10. But if I wanted to be with my dad, I traveled with him.
Yeah.
And when you're younger, of course, they did go to the teacher and they'd say, mind if we take Justin out of school for a month to go to Japan? And the teacher's like, he'll learn more there than he will here anyway.
Right.
So as I got older and I had my own sports going on, it became a little more difficult because you can't miss a month of school when you're a junior in high school. You
Right.
can when you're in fifth grade.
Right. Yeah. I was going
So
to ask. I was going to ask you about
it was
that.
rough.
So
It was a
high
very
school.
hard family life. Very hard family
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Justin. What sports? What were you interested in as far as athletics?
Sorry, I'm getting sun reflection in my eyes
That's
here.
okay. You're all right.
Um, there it is. I played football, I wrestled, I ran track, and I competed in water skiing.
Oh
And
wow.
and slalom course. That's actually from my mom. My mom was a professional water skier amongst and aerobics instructor, and fitness was very important in our family. Um,
Yeah.
and So I was national and state champion wrestler. I was recruited
Oh, wow.
Division I football. I was recruited Division I wrestling too, but I was tired of dropping weight. Back then, you lost an enormous amount of weight to wrestle. You weighed 160, you're wrestling 130. So
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a professional football player. So that's kind of where I set my goals. I set records in track, and I did a lot of, like I said, my mom aerobics instructor, yoga master, and water skier. My dad wrestler. I didn't have a choice, and there wasn't
Yeah.
anything such as in second place didn't exist in my house.
Yeah. No, I can imagine. Was that a little bit challenging for you as far as, I mean, I know your dad's a nice guy and stuff, but if
Yeah.
you, was it, I mean, because a
Well,
lot of people I've talked to that are family members or sons or daughters of a professional wrestler, they expect, you should win every time. I mean, was
yeah,
that
well,
kind
they
of,
expect excellence, but at the same time, by the time Dad had won his sixth, and then he won his seventh world title. I was 13 years old. That's when he broke the record.
hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. Fans of the AWA, you are in for a real treat. My friend Joyce Poston has just released her book titled My Ringside Seat to the AWA. Joyce writes about her personal experiences with wrestlers such as Nick Bockwinkel, Lord Alfred Hayes, Baron Von Raschke, and others. Joyce also has published many photos from her collection that you will not see anywhere else. Order today by email at joyce.postion@gmail.com. Payment is through PayPal. The book is only $20 plus $6 shipping and handling. International orders, please email Joyce for shipping charge. Folks, run, don't walk to your keyboard, and order today. And enjoy the podcast.
I was expected to be the best, yes, but I also realized at a very young age that I would never fill my father's shoes, at least in his respect and in his sport, or so to speak. That would be there's no sense in trying. So I went football. My parents kept me away from wrestling because they didn't really want me to get into wrestling because of the 300-day a year schedule and missing your family and the grueling travel and the toll it took on the body. I really wish I would have listened to my dad. And when I was 7 years old, we moved to a home on a golf course, and my dad, Justin, play golf. You can do it until you're 90, and you can make a lot of money doing it. Yeah, okay, and whatever. You got your dad's a wrestler. Of course, you're going to want to play football and wrestle and do all that kind of stuff and beat yourself up. Now I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have listened to him play golf.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. I mean, I've got arthritis and stuff of my own now. It's like, boy, I'd still be playing golf if I was if I'd just stuck with it. But
Yeah, right?
you can't tell a kid like that. And then especially as you were alluding to, like things I got some grief from my friends every once in a while. It was mostly supportive. My mom and dad were the neighborhood mom and dad. I mean,
Mhm.
they didn't track wrestling, they didn't follow wrestling. Occasionally I'd take some of them to a couple and his kids went to WrestleMania 3 with us. And so, we interacted, but they interacted more as just, the town dad. They were excited as I was when he was in town. Everyone wanted to come over to the house and have Harley grill him a steak for dinner and chocolate chip pancakes for breakfast.
That's awesome.
And
That's
my mom and him would make feasts for the kids. Like, there aren't a bunch of wrestlers coming over, Mom. They're just 10.
yeah, right? That's great. I wanted to ask you, why did you never get in? I know your mom and dad said they didn't want you in the business, but why, I guess, did you feel like I don't want to get in the business because I don't want to be expected to do what my dad did and more? Or
To
what
be
was, is there,
perfectly honest, to be perfectly honest, when I was a senior in high school, I weighed about 175 and I cut to 160. So I always kind of looked at myself as, well, I'm kind of missing about 100 pounds here if I wanted to get into that business. There are ways to do that. The old fashioned ways with steroids or whatever. to get that big if you want to, but that's ridiculously unhealthy, nor would my parents have anything to do with that. So
Right.
I was built more. I was a wide receiver. I was very fast. I was built for that.
Okay.
And so, it's just like when you're a senior and you weigh 175, 180 and your dad weighs 280, 300, it doesn't really seem I'm not going to fit here. This isn't going to work. Could it
Yeah.
have? Yes, but I wasn't willing to take that risk, and my parents wouldn't let me anyway.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on wrestlers' children that decide to get into the business. I mean, there are some that make it big, like Randy Orton, Charlotte
Hmm.
Flair. There are
Sure.
exceptions, but a lot of them, because they're expected to be so good, because their mom or dad was so good, that it's a lot of pressure, and they usually
Well,
cut the.
I had some different pressure also, in that my father's not only known as a technical wrestler, a brawler, one of the best at either of those types of wrestling. He was also known as one of the toughest guys ever. I mean, he was one of the toughest guys ever. And
Yeah.
I broke plenty of bones in football, but it hurts. But he never batted an eye. I remember in the late 70s, early 80s, he actually cracked his femur in his right thigh.
Oh.
And they took him to the hospital. They put a big cast on his leg. He left the hospital, went back to the hotel room, took a lamp and busted it over the cast to break the cast off, got in the car, drove 300 miles to the next town, and wrestled the next night.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, man, if people are going to expect me to be doing that, I don't know about all that. I had my own injuries to deal with.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was just so he was a larger than life type character. And
Yeah.
when you're that much larger than life, then I'm not going to be larger unless I was an Olympic athlete or something. And even then, he had that persona about him that not too many athletes that I can think of any sport garnered.
Yeah.
The
I will
respect.
tell you. Yeah. I will tell you. I've talked to a lot of wrestlers that were in that era, and they all say you don't mess with two people in the business: Harley Race and Haku. That's it. Those are the only two you don't mess with. Otherwise, because they were considered to be the toughest guys in the business.
And, the two toughest people in the business. Who were they?
Your dad, Harley,
Yeah.
and Haku. Hey everyone, this is Brian Ferguson. I want to tell you about a great book written by my good friend, Mr. George Shire. It's called Minnesota's Golden Age of Wrestling from Verne Gagne to the Road Warriors. George dives deep into the golden age of wrestling, starting with the 1950s, talking about Lou Thesz, Verne Gagne, Wilbur Schneider, and many others, and goes all the way deep into the AWA and into the 1980s, ending with the tag team domination of the Road Warriors. Now, this book includes photos of George's personal collection, as well as programs and sports facts that was published for many years. So go to Amazon today or the Minnesota Historical website and get this book as soon as you can. And folks, enjoy the podcast.
There's some stories about Haku that I don't know are real appropriate, but he was a beast. Well, he got in a bar fight one time and bit a guy's nose off.
Yep, I've heard that.
So, yeah. So, and yeah, Dad was the same way. Dad, funny story. Rufus R. Jones used to be a big wrestler here in the Kansas City area. Rufus R. Freight Train Jones. Incidentally, the first time I had to do a 3 to 5 minute speech in front of my class in elementary school is you're supposed to do it on a coworker of your father's, and I did it on Rufus. But Dad owned, or Rufus owned a bar downtown, and Dad and I were there. And these two guys walk in. One of them stays back by the door so people couldn't get out or in, and the other guy went table to table robbing people with a gun. And he got to our table, and my dad looked up at him, never stood up, and he was left-handed. With his right hand, went straight up and hit the guy in the jaw so hard that both jawbones unlatched the side of his head.
Oh,
And of course, he went down. And his dad picked him up and walked him toward his buddy at the front door. And he wasn't going to shoot his buddy. He threw one into the other. They both went out the door. He picked up the stuff from the bag that they had stolen. He said on the bar, he said, "Folks, come get your stuff. I'm going to finish eating."
Oh my gosh. That's an amazing story.
Yeah. So yeah, he was there. People were legitimately scared of him, but he wouldn't hurt anybody unless they were like trying to hurt my mother or I or something, something in that type of situation. My mom used to call him Big Teddy Bear.
Yeah.
But
I've heard a lot of stories. He's a very humble man till you cross him.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the things that when he and I did like that with Rotfist, the last thing he said, but half the things that he and I did in my life together, the last thing he'd say is, "Don't tell your mother." And in fact, I'm writing a book called "Don't Tell Your Mother," and it's about all the escapades that he and I went on that don't tell your mother.
That's great. That's going to be a good book. I can already tell.
Oh yeah, it's this funny things. We were in Italy and in Rome in the Vatican, and this is back before they really had CCTV cameras or whatever. But there was many places in the Vatican you weren't allowed to take photos. It's kind of like going to see the National Archives, going to see the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. You can't take photos in there. You can't do any of that because the flash bulbs affect the ancient paper or whatever that it's written on. Well, it's the same thing in the Vatican. Well, my dad's he got his 35 millimeter camera, and my mom was off someplace. And so he decides he wants to start taking some pictures of stuff you're not supposed to take pictures of. So he's got me looking around the corner watching for the Swiss Guard while he's taking pictures of all this stuff. And if I don't know, spent a half an hour doing it, and I'm looking around for the Swiss Guard. And I'm like, wait, okay, go ahead. He got finished, turned to me, "Don't tell your mother." So there's a lot of, in fact, I tell stories that I'm stories that I'm putting in my book now. I'll tell it to someone like yourself or just on an interview, and she'll say, "You guys did what?" To this day, she's still learning things that we did. He was fun though. God, he's the funniest guy. Just hilarious.
He's a hilarious guy. What was your relationship as an adult like with him? As when you became an adult, were you guys pretty close?
Oh yeah, we were always very close. I knew that I could go to him with I'd go to either of my parents with anything, but he was. I was never scared of him. People was, "Oh my God, I wouldn't come in late if I was you. I'd come in early, before curfew." But it wasn't like that. He was my dad, and so did I mess up? Yeah. Did he ever spank me or anything like that? Absolutely not. But all he had to do is give me that promo look, and I knew that was the wrong thing to be doing. Yeah. One time I'd come home. I was like 14 years old. I came home really late, and I was being I deserved it. And he's telling me this and that, and I'm whatever. And he went to just kind of do one of those on the chin with his right hand. And I went and I moved and made him miss, which really pissed him off. So then the left hand came. And a couple of days later, when I woke up, I realized that I shouldn't be doing that anymore.
A couple days
Oh. But he was just a fun-loving, fun guy. Gentle, kind. Always, he had a thing with kids and animals. That really he had a soft heart for.
Yeah. Doesn't look like he has a soft heart at all, but I know he does because I've been.
Oh yeah, like when you got the autograph on the doll. He didn't have to do that, but
didn't have to.
But when you sit back and look back a little bit on my own life when I do that, I think of the honor that it's people are honored to meet me, and it doesn't confuse me, but I can't express to them how much I'm honored to meet them. I'm honored that you're having me on your show.
Yeah.
That's an honor for me.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I've spent time, with CEOs of large corporations or government officials or whatever. They find out who my dad is, and just for a brief moment, I give them kind of to watch them melt into the little boy that they used to be. And
Yeah.
this guy in a $10,000 suit who was the CEO of God only knows what. Just for a second, I watched your dad when I was with my dad on Saturday mornings.
Yeah.
It's something that I wish other people could feel. Is that just that moment when someone turns into a little child in front of you from nostalgia?
Yeah.
And that's why it honors me so much. I'm like, my gosh, this guy's like looking up to me.
Yeah, I could see that because, you know, I would be in awe when if I ran into you and personally, and I used to watch your dad on TV every,
Yeah.
Saturday night, and it,
That's why he
yeah,
said to give them their 5 minutes.
yeah,
They're never
no,
going to forget those 5 minutes.
yeah. Let me ask you this, Justin. Your dad, he passed away 5 years ago, almost now.
August 1st, 2019.
19, yeah. A sad day, I know, for not just you and but the wrestling world in general. Your
Yeah.
dad. He's got he's got all the accolades. If there's an award out there, a Hall of Fame or whatever, he's in it. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. He's even in the Missouri Broadcasters Hall of Fame. I never figured out how that one worked, but
Maybe it's good promos.
yeah. Speaking of promos, this is kind of funny. When he used to cut those promos, you see him on the web now all the time with the suitcase full of money, putting a bounty on Flair, or just
yeah.
Sure, I'm gonna come down to get you. I'm on, that promo thing. I used to sit behind the camera, stand behind the cameraman, and jump up and down and make him laugh while he was cutting promos. And he'd be serious and just really into it, and sweat dripping down his face, and all of a sudden he'd just stop and start laughing at me. Finally, Yvonne, get him out of here. I'm going to be with this promo, done with this promo today sometime. So I joked around with him too.
Yeah. I want to ask you this. Your dad had that promotion, World League Wrestling.
Yes.
And he had it in Springfield for a while, moved to Eldon, then eventually to Troy outside of St. Louis.
Correct.
Were you ever a part of that at all? Or did you, when he was, were you anything part of that at all? I guess is my question.
Yeah, I was, in the fact that, I had my own family at the time. We lived in Kansas City. We would, they were my stepkids. My ex-wife's children, but they were very young, like toddlers when her and I met. And so they kind of grew up with him. So their friends and their friends' fathers were like, oh my God, that's who you're, Justin's dad is, whatever. But the kids, they didn't really care. So that was kind of normal, I guess. But whenever he would wrestle somewhere around here, and around the 4-state area, 6-state area, I took the kids and we all went, and they were always so excited because the wrestlers didn't know them from Adam. But like I've got a 16-year-old daughter, and the 20-some-year-old wrestlers calling her ma'am, or being so polite and all, and it's because of the respect of my dad. When I did go down to his school, I went down there once, not once, but one time when I was at his school. We were getting ready to go back to Kansas City, and his head trainer was in there, and there was nothing really going on. And Dad said, "You feel like wrestling?" I was like, "Well, it's been a while." And so I got in the ring with his head trainer, and I beat him in collegiate wrestling. Yeah, we didn't throw punches or anything, but in collegiate, I wrestled him. In fact, my dad turned into the coach again. Right when I went to hook the leg, he's like, hook the leg. I got it.
Did you ever wonder what could have been with the AWA had things gone differently? Had their fortunes gone differently? Had certain wrestlers not left and perhaps more money would have been at the disposal of the Gagnes? Well, wonder no further. You can go to Brad Drake's YouTube channel and experience the 1987 Supermod for yourself, as Brad Drake starts off in May 1987 along with Greg Gagne, Baron von Raschke, Vern Gagne himself, Nick Bockwinkel, Larry Zbyszko, Kurt Hennig, and a slew of others as he plays and saves the AWA.
So I tried to be involved with it as much as I could. But again, space and time kind of prevented that. My career was here in Kansas City. And my career, there wasn't a career like that in Eldon.
Yeah, no. I was just wondering, like, especially after your dad had passed away, I didn't know if you had become a little more involved in the business until it got because for a while there, it was kind of a rough go for WLW and
Sure.
Troy, and then COVID hit. About 6 months later, it hit. And I know they were doing the best they could. And I didn't know if you were a part of that process of getting back on track. Okay.
Not after him, no. Of course I've been to the school. I've been to the promotions and whatever, but I've just kind of taken a different tact in my life. Like I said, I'm writing a book. I got good career. And like my dad always says, use your mind, not your body. It hurts too much. So I became educated and became a businessman. But now that we've been working on this document, the Dark Side of the Ring documentary, we've been working on that for a better part of a year. And since then, I've really gotten more involved with him again. Doing podcasts, doing things like this, the local media, writing a book. It's kind of like I'm 4.5 years have passed since he's passed away, and I guess I'm kind of missing him. And this is a good way.
So, I mean, yeah.
And if this is a good way to keep not only his reputation, his spirit alive, but it helps me too.
Yeah, and I don't remember when he wrote a book about probably 14 years ago, I think.
Yeah, it's been a while. I wrote the forward to that book.
Okay, I was going to ask you, were you part of that book? I have it. I haven't read it so long. Actually, he signed my book for me too. Yeah, when I was at an event, and what I loved is, those events like that with your dad, he don't want money. Now, if you buy a picture from him or something, he'll
sure
sign it. It's part of the process. But I bought the book from your dad. He signed it to me and all this. And again, I was in awe, and he just talked to me for a couple of minutes. He don't know me from Adam, and I think that is such a missing component in today's business. As not the indies. The indies are still like that. They'll say, I'm talking about the big ones. They won't. You got to pay bucks to get in and see them, and then bucks to get in line and get an autograph. And you can't talk more than 10 seconds because there's people waiting. And it's so
he didn't like that. He didn't like that, what happened to the business because of that. A quick kind of synopsis of how he was when he would come into Kansas City and be off, so to speak. Any town that was within a 6-8 hour drive of Kansas City, so you're talking Nebraska, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, he would go to every one-horse town in any of those states, if he could get there, and wrestle their local champion. And he might be wrestling in a town of 400 people, and 399 of them were at the wrestling match. And he would wrestle their local boy because he believed that everyone should get a chance to see the world champion, not just people in big cities. And of course, before pay-per-view and cable and all that kind of stuff, where you can see whatever you want, whenever you want, he believed that people deserved to see the world champion in person. So he'd go down to wherever, Oklahoma, and he'd let their hometown boy beat the hell out of him for 58 minutes. And he'd come back and, win at the end. But when he left town, their local hometown hero came that close to being the world champion.
That close.
That close.
Being
So
a lifetime, but he couldn't
really,
pull through.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons that the wrestlers respect him so much is he put so much emphasis on putting himself through harm a lot and being away from family and all he did that for them. He did that for the fans.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt, he is. And on my Mount Rushmore, he's on it.
I think I saw that.
I mean, he's on it. Yeah, he's in one of my other podcasts. Of the four, Mount Rushmore of NWA champions, he's on it because one, he broke the record, and two is he just grinded and grinded and grinded, and he would take on anybody, anywhere, anytime.
Yep.
And he would put on a heck of a show, an event, a wrestling match. It wasn't 2 minutes and they're done. I mean, you don't see our Broadways anymore, but you'll see, he did our Broadways constantly. I mean,
well, when we were talking about the wrestling school, he was telling me, he said, it takes him 20 minutes to get to the ring for a 5-minute match. And he said, I teach them how to wrestle. They go out to New York, learn how to be movie stars. So his the actual motto of his wrestling school was "Shut up and wrestle."
And I remember that. Yeah, shut up and wrestle. Yeah, I do.
And back then, even to this day, if it was done right, he and Rick or Briscoes or the Funks, Von Erichs, they could keep people sitting on the edge of their seat for 1 solid hour. And you didn't have this high-flying acrobatic whatnot that goes on nowadays. Some of the stuff, even Daddy's like, I don't know how the hell that guy did that. But they'd keep him on the edge of the seat the whole time, and for an hour. And there's something to be said for that, in that it doesn't have to be like an action movie in a wrestling ring for it to be entertaining. It can be just. It can be just, well,
yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
It's weird to say, but yeah, it doesn't have to have all that excitement all the time.
Right. It used to be just grind, wrestle. You might have a few hot spot moves, but I mean, if you did an hour match, 57 minutes of it was wrestling, you might jump off the second top rope or something. Like your dad, he used to go off and do the headbutt on people.
You know
what I mean? I mean, things like that.
My mom used to get so mad at him when he did that. She, Harley, you're really gonna be sorry that you do that. Someday in your life, you're gonna be sorry. And I got to be a little older, and he was in his room looking for something or whatever, and couldn't remember where it was. I can't remember anything anymore. I should have listened to your mother. That damn flying head butt. Can't remember a thing anymore. But he did it. He did it for the people to enjoy.
He was a heck of a wrestler, heck of a man, and I can just tell that you raised a heck of a good son.
Oh, thank you,
man. And I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I mean, I
understand.
But I mean, you seem like a very true gentleman and respectful, and I appreciate you coming on here and
absolutely
telling his story.
My mom taught me to be a gentleman. I had to open the door for a lady before I could reach the door handle.
There you
go. She taught it, and then Dad expected to see it when he was around. The propriety, the gentleman, the respect for others. He'd tell me, if someone's one day older than you, listen to them because they've been here one day longer.
That's a good analogy, I
And,
guess. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, I call everyone. I still to this day I call everyone sir or ma'am until they either say my last. You can call me Mister whatever, or they say you can call me John. But up until then, it's sir or ma'am.
Yeah. I'm with you. Yeah. Well, that's
But
good.
it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was
Any
a lot
other
of
parting thoughts before we wrap it up? I know
Well,
you're working on this book. When are you
yeah,
expecting to have it?
I'd like to have it out this year. I'm working
Okay.
real hard on getting it out this year.
Don't tell your
Just
mother.
Yeah, just a bunch of stories about Dad and I. We left an arena in North Carolina, South Carolina, somewhere, and Dad had one of those Jeep Wagoneers. Remember the old ones in the '70s with
Oh
the
yeah. Yeah.
switch in the glove box? You turn it to emergency, and all four tires pulled like a tank. Well,
Yeah.
Flair liked it, so he sold Flair his Wagoneer, and he bought a new one. Well, we left the matches one night, and we were driving down the road. There's a stoplight. Flair stops at the stoplight. Dad pulls up behind him, looks over at me, and says, "I wonder how powerful this thing is," and pushes Flair right through the stoplight. Tires and smoke screeching everywhere. Sure enough, a police officer saw it. He came roaring up, thinking he's going to arrest a bunch of hoodlums or something. He saw Flair, he saw my dad, and it turned into law enforcement was out the window. It turned into calling all his buddies to come and get autographs. And And we got back in the car, start driving down the road, going on. He looks over at me. Don't tell your mother.
Tell your mother.
So I'm having
I'm
a lot of
excited
fun
for
with
this
it.
book.
Yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think people will really enjoy it too. A good laugh.
I mean, just a few stories you've told us on this podcast. I'm sure you've got a ton more, and look for this book to come out, folks, when it comes out. Well,
Yeah,
Justin,
I'll let you know when
Yeah, let
it's
me
near
know.
that time. I'll come back on and say hi to you.
Yeah, you bet. I love that. Yeah, perfect. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Justin
Brian,
Race, thank you so much.
Brian, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it too. And folks, if you're listening, thank you. If you're watching, thank you. Look for Justin's book when it comes out by here, and we'll talk to you soon.